Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. The next Wasteless World Talks are here with Bill, Kevin, and myself, writing the language in a search for another word or the meaning of another word. And the word today is end, E-N-D. Very simple term, but Bill, if you close your eyes, what came first to your mind if you hear the term end?
Many, the end of the book, the end of life, the end of the job, um, a whole flood.
And what about you, Kevin?
Well, I was thinking relief. When when you buy a book and then it comes, you're on the last page and the writer writes in capital letters the end. I always wonder why on earth did they do that? Because it's so obvious. But when it's your turn, it's such a relief to write those two words. It's such a great feeling. So for me, like Bill, ending can be both positive and negative, but the first thing that came to mind was relief.
Interesting. Came to me 2 days ago. I was searching for a term. Originally, I had something different, but then it came at the end, and I realized there is so much in it that it must be discussed. And it was very interesting in the noon discussion, especially the first round of questions. Almost everybody was negative about the term. In the second round, everybody was positive about the term. And we have been looking for the best end and so on. Of course, we cannot speak about the happy ending, not to be confused somehow by some people. But there is a company in Czech Republic, it's called Happy Ending.
I think it's interesting because if you think of end, it sounds so final. It's like this cut off. But what it actually leads to is a transition. Nothing, if there's a sudden ending, it's not like the whole world has ended. There's something that has to come after that. So as something ends, something else will begin.
Yep, yep. Even life is just you're just walking into the next room. Um, it, it, and it's not. You said negative and positive. Yes, even a book, a book that you really enjoy and you can't wait to have another hour to get a little bit further, and then the end. But then that's the time to where your mind starts working with what you have just fed it, and you realize, oh, I didn't realize, oh, and so it's a beginning of the analysis of what you just finished, and I think it's a lot the same with life.
Uh,
Uh,
I have asked you several times probably whether you like more the empty page or the full page, and we agree that the empty page for us it's better because we can fill them, can fill it with whatever. And for me, as you said it, Bill, it looks like the end is the sign of empty paper. For me, is this empty page because this is exactly where start my brain to work and process the new story.
right. So in a way, it's negative, but in a way, it's positive. And if the page is full, that means that you are following what somebody else is leading you. When the page is empty, you get to fill it up yourself, and you are leading yourself. Yeah, I could take it either way.
Is there any end of your life which you really cheer you up? I mean, this was the end which you will never forget because it was maybe the beginning of something else, or is there anything like that which stay in your memory?
So my wife has 2 days of work left, and then she's retired. So the word end is very appropriate. Thank you. And that's exactly what she's asking herself. What do I do now? and what a wonderful opportunity.
And what about you, Kevin?
I was thinking the happiest ending was leaving school. That was really, it was such a relief to get away. And yeah, I have to say, I never looked back. It was, an English state school with 2,000 students, 2,000 kids is a chaotic place at the best of times. And so that was one very happy ending. But interesting enough, when I did my degree, when I left university, that was a terrible ending. I didn't want that to end. I had such a great time.
Oh, I was just the opposite. I could not wait to get out.
Why was that?
It was not bad. I was not suffering. I was actually quite privileged to be able to go to a good university. Um, I so wanted to get on with my life. I felt a little stale. I grew up in a little town, and my mother always said to me, "There's a big world out there. Go and see and do." And so for years, I'd been waiting to go and see and do. So I was glad to get out.
I can't say.
No, nothing.
I was not on a university, so I cannot compare. I was just one day there during the first, I don't know how it's called, if you have to make some exams if they should take you. So I make the exams, and I do remember until today there was a question, how many teeth has a man? So I put my finger in my mouth and try to count. And that's the only memory which I had. So I was not accepted for whatever reason.
Well, I think that's enough of a reason right there.
It was dentist school you were applying to?
No, it was agriculture school. I don't know why. I have no relation to agriculture, but it was, let's say, the easiest school. And you know, the difficulty was that I made these exams in 1990, so about generally in, what was it, 5 months after the Velvet Revolution. And already my school leaving exam, we have to change completely the knowledge which we have learned in the last 4 years, at least for 3 different things. So I made this exam from Czech language. There has been a lot of changes. A Russian language, again, we spoke about very different topics at the end. And I have an English, it was fine, it was the same, and math generally, which I hate. But there was a lot of which we have to learn completely new from zero, because all the 4 years, or all the 12 years generally, we have learned something completely different. And then I went to this exam to the university because it should be simply, for me it was not. The reason why I went there, it was not because I look for education. It was because without it, I must go to the army. And I do not want to go to the army. At the end, I postponed it because I started to work in the steel factory, as I mentioned, and the army time was postponed by 1 year, I think. So.
Have you ever tried the never-ending meeting, or the never-ending journey, or the never-ending concert?
This is where you are in a meeting that is painful, and even if you could count the minutes and it would be 1 hour, every minute is not ending, and it just, that hour, it just, yes, I have been in that meeting.
I do remember one similar meeting when I was with my Japanese boss speaking to another Japanese boss in Poland. They spoke for 10 hours, and I have to, in Japanese, and I have to sit in the room because I was a manager. So I started to handwrite, and at the end, I was left handwriting in a mirrored handwriting, which is easier in left. But I was quite skillful at the end after the 10 hours. No food, no food, 10 hours. Horrible.
I saw once, rather than experience myself, on a Danish commuter train. It was a hot, sunny day, and this poor guy had a lot of beers, and the train suddenly stopped between stations, and it's normally only 3 minutes between each station, and it just didn't go again. And he was desperate to go to the bathroom, and so in the end, he had enough. He got up and he walked over to the doorway and was taking his zip down. And this old lady got up and said, "Don't you dare. You hold my hand and you talk to me." And, you know, this train just didn't move.
Oh, sometimes there just is no end.
Yep, that poor guy.
On the other hand, speaking about the end, do you know that the end was the surname of the author of the Never-Ending Story?
No.
Michael End. He was a German, Michael Ende. He was a German, and he wrote the other book which I sent you before, this girl named Momo, which is fascinating book about stealing the time of people. But it's so well written. Really, I do recommend everyone, not only children. It's a children book, but it's really great. And I think the Germans or I don't know who made the movie. I think it was German. Italy somehow the cooperation, but it's well done as well. Girl named Momo. And his name is...
living...
Yes?
Imagine living in way back when, where people actually thought that the horizon was the end of the world. I mean, in a way, it must have been quite terrifying, just the thought that you could fall off of the end of the world. But on the other hand, it's really, you know, it's really reassuring that you're on this thing and you've got this boundary, and that's where you will live.
Have you ever lived in...
We have no boundary, and so there's so much unknown.
Yeah.
You think we have no boundaries? It looks to me that we have more than before.
I was comparing the flat Earth, where you have a boundary, you know that you're going to fall off, as compared to now when we have no boundaries, and that's very unsettling to think that you have no boundaries. In a way, it's a good, and I know with children, when you're raising children, they need to know where their boundaries are. That's something that they tell parents. But as an adult, now we have no boundaries, so anything is okay. There is no end. Oh. Is that good? That there be no boundaries, there is no end? Is that positive or is that negative? Some people, that would scare them to death.
Yeah. I was talking to a Danish farmer, and we're about the same age. And he has this beautiful farm on an island, and it looks out over, and you see other islands and Danish towns. Really, really beautiful. And he said, you know, as I get older, when I look at that horizon, it just gets narrower and narrower the older I get. And I thought that was really, you know, a worrying prospect, that as you age, your horizon begins to come in, because then it signifies you're losing possibilities, you're losing opportunity, you have less and less of everything as you get older, which I thought was really terrifying.
Do you feel the same? For me, I feel the very opposite. As I'm older, the horizon is opening to me. with all the information, meeting you, the other people. It's really opening every single day, and I'm fascinated by that.
I think that observation by that Danish farmer is very interesting, and that in fact is the definition of the word end, I think. But I don't feel that way. I feel like you, Michael, that the older I get, the more possibilities there are. When I was younger, I had very narrow world. I had to accomplish all this before my head hit the pillow at night, and I didn't have any, I couldn't, I just didn't have the bandwidth to be able to wonder, well, what if, and what's over there, and could I try that? I didn't have the time, the energy, the mental, anything. Now that I am, I don't know what to use the word retired. I'm not really retired, but I have much more time, and I can say, well, what if? And so my horizon is like this now. That's interesting. How can both be true? Kevin, that was your example. You have to answer that. How can they both be true? And how do you feel?
I feel that actually the exact opposite of the farmer. I think that as I've got older, there's just less and less restriction. You know, when you're younger, you think, well, I can't write a book, but now you just, well, I can do anything I want to do. So as I've got older, you know, instead of waiting for someone to say, hey, why don't you do this? Or, you know, just do it, because no one will give you that opportunity anyway. So if you want something, you just got to go and get it. And so I feel the opposite to that farmer, but then I'm not tied to the earth in the same way that he is.
Right.
I think the limitation on his side is exactly because of being tied to the piece of land, because he see his restricted mobility and so on. He cannot reach so much in such a short time. So it may come this way. But for us, we are not bound to one place or the another. We are just open to informations, to thoughts, to ideas. You know, I just listened yesterday or day before yesterday, there was the next conference in India dedicated to Industry 5.0, this time insurance companies and leaders of the insurance companies in India, so probably big players. And one of the statements scared me totally, to be honest. One of the guys says, you know, insurance is about not being certain about something. So we do not want to use AI for knowing what will come, because otherwise there will be no business. And you know, war is uncertainty. He did not say he liked war. He just said it in these words, which means for him, war is fine because there is a lot of potential business. And he connected with Industry 5.0, which I hate completely, to be honest. And just 1 hour later, I read an article in Czech internet where a guy on a server called Sustainable, obnovitelně in Czech, wrote about a new Korean tank which will run on hydrogen on a server dedicated to sustainability. He is writing about a killing machine. I hate it, to be honest. He did not connect it with Industry 5.0, but still connect these two things. And I think this his view of the world is so similar to the farmer's view. And it's a young guy, so it's not an old guy. And I think that all this AI stuff, whatever, it's making exactly the way of looking at the world as the farmer does. Because it's generally narrow your own perspective, because everything for you will think the AI. You don't need to think about. So where is the horizon? It's only on the battery charge on your smartphone or a notebook or tablet or Word or whatever.
And it's just really depressing, the thought that, you know, the horizon goes from a landscape to a portrait, because then it's really narrow.
Good imagination of this, yeah. And there is more and more content is being in this way, not this way, but this way. And everybody is promoting, we finally do that. Even YouTube.
Yeah, perhaps future generations will have one eye above the other rather than side by side.
You mentioned it before, and I think you are quite right.
My brain is stuck when you bring up the insurance industry, because there are so many industries that are changing or going away entirely. The petroleum industry, for example, will be very different in 20 years or in 10 years even. But the insurance industry also, for a number of reasons, the insurance industry basically has three types of insurance. There's health and life insurance, there's automobile insurance, and then there's everything else insurance. And when we get Medicare for all and stop this foolishness with having insurance companies in the middle trying to think like doctors, that will go away. And mobility in the future will be Uber and Lyft, and we won't own our own cars. Everything will be a mobility subscription. And of course, then the fleets will be self-insured. So just with those two, which I may live long enough to see both of those happen, and now the insurance company is 2/3 smaller because it has changed, and other industries are changing and going away. We don't have secretaries anymore. We don't have bank tellers anymore, right? In 2007, the year that the first smartphone was delivered, nobody knew what an app developer was, right? And now we have millions of app developers in the world. So it's exciting. Don't you think it's exciting?
But the interesting thing is, Bill, all these things ended, but we didn't notice.
Right.
They were there one day, suddenly there was an end to them, but we carried on. It's yeah, and we don't miss them.
That's a good point.
Have you noticed some websites which ended but still are there but are not being updated? I use many websites as a source of information in Japan, all over the globe. And some of them disappear in a way that they exist, but they are not updated.
We do that also with people. You look on Facebook, I saw a friend of mine's birthday is today, but he died 5 years ago. So we're the same way. The websites keep on living, and people keep on living, some definition of living, perhaps.
Yesterday, here is quite popular, the food deliveries, or after COVID, it's quite boosted and so on. And we went in the old days with when my daughter was small, so we went quite often to a good Chinese restaurant here in a city, and they have one special soup which was really delicious. Not a single one offer it. I do not remember the name. And she just remembered, and she said, "Yeah, it will be nice to get it." And I said, "But it looks like that the restaurant is closed, because I was yesterday riding next to it, and it looks like closed." But she tried to order it online, and they offer it. They offer it for the prices of 2015, something like that. So I am curious. After this meeting, I will go around to look whether they still exist. And we are considering if they are not existing, so she should try to order.
Right.
But what is interesting, what Kevin says that we did not notice at the end, and we did not notice. Automotive industry in Europe, a lot of companies is said they will close and so on. We are informed, but we see only the big players, and the people don't know there is tier 1, tier 3, tier 2, whatever. They don't know. But this company will be gone. Yeah, that's right. Without noticing. That's the interesting part.
And when people are talking about change, and this will be different, and that will be different, and we get afraid. Oh, no, I don't like change. No, I want it the way it was. And yet, as you just said, it does change, and we don't notice. So what were we afraid of?
Yeah. Have you ever seen these YouTube videos where they show kids of today an old-fashioned telephone with the dial? They don't have a clue how to use it. I mean, why should they?
I don't know whether I showed you before. I'm not sure if I still have the app. But it's a great way. It's for Android, it's called All Phone Dialer. And you really has to dial.
Does it work?
Yeah, super.
It works like, but the best part, you have to remember the numbers.
Yeah.
Which we don't do anymore. Right. But it's great. It's really great. I keep it there because it's so interesting. And time to time, I use it just to remember the numbers.
Right, right.
Have you ever tried, when you go into a bank machine and then you've got a 4-figure code that you put in? And I've had the same code for years. And then I went to Germany and the keypad is different. And then I couldn't use it because I didn't know what the numbers were. It's just a movement. So it was really a shock.
I have a problem with my keyboard on my notebook, and some keys do not work every time. So it's time to time they work. And it's really hard, especially if you enter a PIN code for something. Not easy to do. And I do remember that a few years ago, they invited us to the bank and they said, you don't need a PIN code anymore, choose a picture. How should I remember what I choose for a picture? They show me 5 pictures and I should remember. The next day, I didn't know what picture it was.
Yeah.
So,
but it's so strange. When I was in London in January, and there was a crowd of people inside a courtyard. And as you go by, I thought, what did they look at? I went in, and they were looking at a telephone box. This was now
a telephone
box. These red London telephone boxes.
Oh, sure, yeah.
This was now a tourist attraction, and people were taking it in turns to go and stand inside it. And I mean, in Denmark, in Copenhagen, that you don't see a public telephone; they just don't exist any longer.
They don't exist. No.
But it was a great idea. Some turn it into a small library or small office or whatever. But instead of doing so, most of them has been simply crashed and wasted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's so stupid behavior. But if we speak about the end, what is the image of the end of old times? Because this is a sentence which frequently, the technology is the end of all times. It's a common phrase. And many see it with fear or feel it with fear, but then they even do not recognize that it's gone until somebody asks them.
Yep. Well, we have conjured up, we have imagined the end of all time to be something very terrible, nuclear war. and everybody dies, or we blow up the planet, or something. But it may not be like that. It may not. It may not be like that. It may be an asteroid, like what got rid of all the dinosaurs, or we just go to sleep and we don't wake up, or we wake up in a different existence
Or we wake
and
up,
don't notice that that the existence is different now.
or we wake up in a time where money will not exist. Can you imagine that we wake up and the next day there will be no money?
Do you mean no method of exchange? Because we are getting to the point where there is no physical dollar
Uh,
bill, coins.
no financial transaction in as a numbers or banknotes or whatever. That will be interesting because the communities which are more physical will be able to exchange things, and they will start probably with exchanging things. But there will be, especially I think in the cities, there will be a very big problem because the people simply get used to it. Yeah, right now there is a lot of discussion here because a lot of the restaurants refuse payment cards. They just accept cash. And I think the right for cash is the right thing, but refusing, and if you have, many people have only payment cards with them, so they don't carry cash anymore. So it's some way, some middle stage, and just now they cut two undersea cables, and already there is a problem between I think Denmark and Germany or Poland somewhere there the cables are cut.
Right.
So it's quite interesting.
Thinking about the end, I read this thing once about the end of everything, the end of the universe. And this philosopher was talking about, of course, all species would no longer need physical bodies. I mean, we would have done away with those a long, long time, further back in evolution. And in the end, everything has just become so spread out that there's no event. And so there is very, very little time. And so the end of all life in the universe would just be this consciousness floating where time drags on almost endlessly. So a second would be an eternity for these, what we become in the future. And that's it. It just fades away.
We have spoken about shadow in one of the previous talks. And 3 days ago, there was a published study, I think from Germany, not sure about, where they realized that the laser beam have a shadow. They never considered. The physics says it's impossible, but they make some tests and so on. They discovered, I can send you the study, I have it, that a laser beam has a shadow, you know, and it came to the moment when you, me, and a lot of people learned that it's impossible. But our children and grandchildren, for them, will be impossible not to have a shadow. You know, this is the end of one way of thinking exchanged by the other. And I don't know who of us can try. I think you need some special glasses or whatever to see the shadow, probably. Not sure, as I said, it's too complicated to read. But I have a copy of the study. But it is quite interesting how much things are ending every moment, because every moment is different. So if it's different, if it's changed, there must something end. So even the second ends to come the next second. So and so end is omnipresent.
Anyway, it's interesting. The more knowledge we gain, the more things end.
As well, yeah.
Or do they end, or do they just change? Do they morph into we learn? So what the flat Earth did not end. In fact, we're still talking about it, 1,000 years later. But it changes, and it will continue to change, and we will continue. I would hope that we would continue to learn more and not simply accept as dogma, which is what will happen if we throw away science. So there may not be an end.
No, I agree. I think the end is just it's just a transition to what, it's like on a train journey, you get off the train at the central station. The train journey has ended, but your journey hasn't. You can take a bus, you can take another train, you can take a car. So an ending is just the start of something new.
So why so many are scared of end? Is it because nobody explained it this way?
I think so, because it does sound like it's a finality when it's not. It is just a transition.
And
usually
in religion, they would throw this in our face, the end of time. You'll be in heaven for the end of time, or in hell for the end of time. Well, I'm afraid of that. And so they used it to put fear in us, to control us, so that we'll do what the giants want us to do.
If we come back to the time, as we agreed, it's a construct. Isn't end a construct?
I think the end is a shallow way of thinking, because it doesn't end. There's no end. It changes. It morphs. But the fact that there is an end, there's an end of your employment. Are you afraid of that? Yes. There's an end of your life. Are you afraid of that? Yes. It is used to control us, when in fact it doesn't exist.
You know what exists? 2 minutes left. To the end.
You're just trying to control us.
Yeah, it's a construct, Michael.
It will be great. On the other hand, I love to start every single time new with a new term. It's like we can speak for hours, but it will somehow get shallower and shallower, and we will be tired, and at the end it will not escalate in this way as it escalates right now, because it was the best. Of course, you can do more, but let's let the others think about it. So 1 minute 16. Thank you once again for a great discussion. I will say it's endless, at least from the perspective of our meetings, where we know we will meet again next week, and we will discuss the next one. And I'm sure it will be interesting. I have already one idea, but I have to check whether we did not spoke about it already. I think we didn't. But for now, I have to say, have a nice time, free of waste and wasting in all its forms. Stay safe, be free, be human, and I don't know what to say.
And have
no way
of the gratitude that we have for opportunities to talk about this. So there's no end to our gratitude.
That's a great final. Thanks a lot, and see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.